we've got to remember the history of Eastmoreland together. This is a really special place, and it takes a minute to kind of reflect on that it is historic. I've been hearing people on the other side say, oh, it's not a historic neighborhood, it's okay if we tear it down. That's not true. And then I want to take you through a case study. I am also a developer, and I know exactly how to make the most money by tearing down your neighborhood and rebuilding it. So I can talk to you about that. And then Irvington, I live there, I remodel there, and I want to talk to you about what it's like living in a historic district and remodeling in a historic district. It's not tough. Now, a case study. This is Jeff and Lori Baum's house, if you know them. They're an amazing couple. Jeff's uncle is the guy who wrote The Wizard of Oz. He doesn't like to talk about that. He also doesn't like me to tell people that he was an Olympic wrestler at one time. But here's this beautiful house, and it's very valuable. So if as a developer I can tear this down and do infill, then I can tear down any house in this neighborhood, and people will. Do you know your neighborhood is worth $1 billion to developers? That's how much profit we can squeeze out of your neighborhood by tearing it down. So I was just thinking of some evil things we could do. And here's something we could do with the Baum's house. And this is legal with the new RIP. Is we can build 2 McMansions there. You know, it's such a beautiful house. It'd be terrible to do it, but we could do 2 and 2 ADUs. And I think we would make $1 million profit. Or we could do 2 duplexes, and I think I can make $1.6 million. Or we can do 7 cluster units. They like to call them cottage clusters because cottage sounds old-fashioned, and they know we as Portland's value history and old homes. Don't be fooled. The good versus the infill. Gosh, don't we love old houses? Now, it doesn't have to go that way. Look at historic Irvington. So typical permits are only $250. I hear a lot of things about how difficult it is to get windows. And I was talking to somebody who said, gosh, we paid our architect a lot of money to design these windows for us that would work. I just call up a window guy and say, hey, I'm doing another house in Irvington. Could you come look at the windows? And then he sends something to the city that they accept because he's used to it. And I don't really, it doesn't slow me down at all. The next thing is, of course, the environmentally sound thing to do is to leave these houses alone. When you hear about, isn't a new house better for the environment? It certainly is not. I was just talking to somebody who wrote her PhD thesis on the cost to our environment of throwing away these old homes, and it is many tons of CO2, but she calls it CO2e for her thesis. It's the equivalent thereof. Okay, and then in Irvington, homes have gone up in value 9% more than they have in your neighborhood since we've got a historic district. Gives people peace of mind to know there's not going to be a lot of junk going in next door. And then preservation is great for jobs. When we do a big house, we're putting a lot of, not only is it the pollution of new concrete, but it's also all the dollars are put into materials instead of jobs. If you restore your old house, that's all dollars going back into your economy, not spreading out to China and elsewhere. Now, that was Irvington, but most of the city is not protected. You can see we have the best investment market in the United States for property. I had a call from a cousin in Florida who said, hey, I want to start putting my money into Portland. I had a call from a cousin in California. Hey, I want to start putting my money in Portland. Everybody knows this is the most beautiful city. It's the most livable city in the United States. It's time to put your dollars here and start building willy-nilly. Well, we have to be good stewards of this place and hang on. 50% population growth coming in 50 years. This is Selwood. This is a place in Selwood. I lived there for 15 years. There are parts of that neighborhood that I don't recognize. And when a community loses its history like that, it's like it has amnesia. It's very disorienting, very confusing. Wouldn't it be nice to bring your grandchildren back to see where you once lived? We have to kind of hang on to our precious resources. These homes are art. This is in Laurelhurst right now. You can see an old house, some new houses going in. Every new house has its totally different style. They don't seem to relate to each other or anything else. There's that house again, just to remind you it's happening right now in your neighborhood. We have to move quickly. Huge change is coming. It's inevitable. But we can make it work for us. It's also an opportunity. In Laurelhurst, they've been arguing about historic district for a generation. Maybe this will help them realize that dream. This is our moment to pull together, think fast. I've met some very bright people tonight, and when I think about the intellectual capital in this room, boy, we need you. Government seldom proves itself very creative. It's up to the citizens to come through and figure this out. And that starts with this historic district, and it continues with thoughtfully figuring out how this infill will happen throughout the city. Remember the question. It's to save or demolish. That is the question. Don't let anybody reframe it some other way. I heard one on Nextdoor was about, well, isn't it racism to not allow infill? Well, I think that's a crazy argument. We have to remember the real deal is to save or demolish, and don't be distracted.